Thank you, Molly. And good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Smith. I'm the Director for the Department of Recreation and Parks. And we're excited to have you all here tonight as we begin the very first steps in the development of the Bedford Road Park site there in the Pikesville community. I will introduce some of the team members here that we have on the call. We have Drew Emmer, who is our Chief of Capital Development on the call. We have Courtney Weinstock, who is our Deputy Director for the agency. We have Ben Porter, who is our Chief of Nature, Environmental, Agricultural, and Direct Programming. We have Kara Berman, who's a Regional Coordinator for Region 1, which is where the Pikesville community resides. We have Amy Bagnoni, who is our Chief of Recreation Services. And then you've also heard from Molly Pickle, who is our Planner 2, and Brandon Swearin, who is our community supervisor there directly in the Pikesville community. So that's kind of our Recreation Parks team who is on the call tonight. Again, we want to thank you all for being here. As an agency, we're always looking to improve and add to our park inventory here in Baltimore County. And we're excited to begin the process here for the Bedford Road project. But really, this is the beginning, and the most important part of this beginning is the input from you, the residents, and stakeholders in that community and around that park property. So really, we're going to do a brief presentation of the existing property, show you some examples of some other things that we've been doing and some, other aspects of parks that we have, and then we will open it up to you. You can also put any comment you have in the chat window, and I see some are already doing so. And we will be, recording those as well. Now, this will also not be your only opportunity for input. We will put up our email address at the end of the presentation to get additional feedback from residents who are either here or who may not be here. So feel free to share that email address with those who have an interest. And then once we get the feedback, we will work to develop 2 concepts for the park, and then we will come back again to the community to hear the thoughts on what we have put together with the consultant. And then after we get that additional feedback is when we'll begin to move forward. So it is a process, but it helps us get the best input from you, the residents. I also have on here from Councilman Patoka's office, Justin Silberman. And Justin, would you like to have any comments, sir?
Sure. Thank you so much, Director Smith. It's good to see everyone here. And Councilman Patoka sends his regrets that he's not able to make it tonight. But I know we've been working hard with the 4 communities impacted, Villanova, Paul's Crossing, Williamsburg, and Willow Glen South. And really appreciate all the progress that's been made to this point. Everybody working together. And this truly shows what can happen when government and community comes together to do, spectacular things. And this is just another spectacular thing in the greater Pikesville area where we need more open and green space for our inner Beltway neighborhood. So thank you so much to you, Director Smith, to your team, and to everyone here tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great team. I just sign the leave forms and push the paper here. The team here does all the work. So with that, I will turn it over to Drew Emmer, our Chief of Capital Development.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. It's good seeing so many people. So we are here to discuss Bedford Road Park site. We will be looking to find a name for this site as well. So it's not going to be Bedford Road Park site forever. As Director Smith said, this is our first of at least 2 public input meetings. And just to start off, these are my favorite things to say. Design is funded for this project. We have $250,000 worth of funding for design from FY22, actually FY23, and we have $1.5 million worth of construction funding from FY24, which we just got the start of this month. So this is, I think we can officially say this is a greenlit project, and we're looking forward to getting started. If I'm assuming most people know where this site is, but it's located in Pikesville. If you're familiar with the other park site we just started on at Church Lane, it's about a little less than 2 miles away from this site. The property currently, it was a nursery and a farm stand. It currently has some structures on it that we will be raising in the near future. We have the property address up there. It's 4223 Bedford Road. It's right opposite Suburb Magnet Middle School. It's just under 4 acres, and it was purchased with $1.1 million of program open space funding. So thank you, DNR, and everybody for that 5% property tax. When you buy your properties, that tax helps us purchase these properties. This is within the boundaries of the Greater Pikesville Rec Council, and we settled on this property in November 2021. We in-house did what we call a constraints plan, which kind of shows us the area that we have to work with within the site. This is one of the better ones we have. It's a little oddly shaped, but it's pretty clear. There's not many environmental constraints other than setbacks and a couple specimen trees. As you can see from the aerial, we've kind of just been mowing it and keeping it in the condition as you see, waiting for park development. Getting to the size of the site, it's just under 4 acres. There's some dimensions up there. If you're good with dimensions, it's about 300 feet wide on one end, a little under 130 on one end, and about, an average of 800 feet long. So I know visuals kind of help of what could go there, and I'll turn this to Director Smith to kind of talk about what we're looking at.
Certainly. Thank you, Drew. And as we know, in the greater Pikesville community, there is a large desire for additional athletic field or programmable field space. We do understand that. We do recognize that and are familiar with the concern. We wanted to put this diagram up here to just kind of indicate that while we look at it, this site would not be a site that would be feasible to develop for an athletic field. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner is kind of the dimensions on a regulation-sized soccer field. And you can see that it would have extreme difficulty to fit into the space of the existing site constraints on this property, as well as include things such as appropriate parking and infrastructure that goes along with the field. So we wanted to show that we did understand the concern that is often brought up in Greater Pikesville of additional athletic field space. We did try to look at this property as a potential use in that manner, but we do not feel that this property would be conducive to development into an athletic or a programmable athletic field space. So we thought it had value to show that visually, just so everyone can see that.
Thank you, Director. So you are seeing where we are with our design phase. We do have a design consultant engaged for our initial site work, which will get us to 2 concepts that we'll come back to share. So what you see is where we are, just a site map showing the constraints, and moving on to scope. That's why we're here. We need your help. We do know that the proposed scope of improvements is going to include raising the existing structures. There's no value in keeping them, but we need to hear what everyone wants for the community. Just to give some examples, potential amenities could be parking, a walking path, dog park, playground, picnic area, a pollinator garden, just open green space, pavilions, community theater stage, plaza with game tables, similar to what we're doing at Parkside down the road, which kind of on our next slide. This is Meadow Creek Park. It's on Church Lane, a little under 2 miles away. We are in the final stages. We are waiting for bids to get back, and we plan to break ground on this project between September and November, depending on how long it takes to get the contract completed. This site is what we'd consider a passive park. It has a natural playground, a plaza. It has accessible walking paths as well as a natural mode walking path, a natural stream crossing. The Bedford Road park site does not have any water flowing through it, but this site does have a pollinator garden, something that we could certainly fit on the Bedford Road site. This site also has limited parking, mainly for accessible parking. So this would be an example of a similar sized passive park site and the amenities that it could hold. I know the next questions are going to be timeline. So the good news is we're already in the middle of, not in the middle, but we're close to the middle of the timeline. We've engaged a consultant. They prepared the constraints plan. We're here now engaging the public for input, which we feel will go till fall because I know, or we hope some emails will come in as people think more about the project. We'd like to get the scope finalized by November so we can start design and permitting, which will take about a year. The bid phase usually takes 5 to 6 months, which would bring us into a spring 2025 groundbreaking and hopefully a fall 2025 ribbon cutting. These are all estimates, and these are all if everything goes well and we don't stop. But sometimes we have to stop for the good of the project and to make sure we're giving the community what they need. So this is a goal, and these are just some dates we're putting out there that we feel could possibly be possible. We will go to hear from you in a minute, but just to put up here, and we'll put it in the chat, this is our capital projects email. Please feel free to email any suggestions, questions. We monitor this daily, so we will get back to you. And I will turn this to Molly to call on the first person.
Yep, so as a reminder, please just put your name in the chat, or you can write a comment directly in the chat and we will read it out loud. And I see that the first person who wrote to speak is Dr. Dartegnon Tisdale from the Williamsburg community.
You're unmuted.
Yes, good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing? I wanted to ask the question of, I saw you have listed that it cannot hold any athletic field or anything that you said earlier. And then you show the list of things that possible other ideas that could be. And what I'm wondering is, are there any other things that you already know that won't work here so that we won't have that idea and submit things that we already would see that wouldn't work there? So is there anything else besides the athletic field that you also feel would not work in this area?
We don't, sorry, Director.
Fit into a parcel of this size. So kind of the bigger programmable recreation spaces would be problematic in this space, but as Drew showed at the Church Lane site, we're able to do a, like a natural playground, some, gathering areas, walking paths, things of that nature. So it's more what we kind of term internally like passive recreation use, as opposed to programmed activity spaces for like athletics. So really the things we've ruled out are the kind of the bigger athletic or bigger facility pieces. And really we want to hear what do you guys, what the residents want there, and then we can see what we can, fit into that from there.
And just two more questions. One is that I saw also, we talked about green spaces as far as something, another idea. Is that a possibility that something could happen like that? Because lately, some of the meetings we've been attending for other ideas, the open space idea for green space hasn't been welcomed that much.
Director Smith, do you want to speak to that one? I don't know which meeting.
Yeah, which meeting? And I'm sorry, Dr. Tisdale, but I don't know
Well,
which meeting
we're not this meeting with you guys, but other projects that they're doing in our area. They were talking about when we're looking at building another U-Haul place for
non-county.
Yes, there was talked about having green space there, but that wasn't really welcomed as much as being able to put another storage house place there. So that's why I was just wondering, is that a true possibility I'm just trying to narrow down so that as the community thinks about what can be done there, it's no need of us going into something that we know that is not even a possibility.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that conversations and the meetings you had were with, kind of it's a private developer developing a private parcel, for the U-Haul piece. But as recreation parks, we tend to err on the side of green space. That's kind of more of our focus is open space, green space. We of course want programmable recreation space where appropriate. Um, but as we mentioned, the size constraints of this parcel would not lend itself to that. So we are always, and as you saw at the Church Lane, we really tried to maximize the green space and even add by putting in things like a pollinator garden and to add to the green space, so it's not just all green and we mow it, but that it also adds to the environment with pollinator gardens, with um, we've done rain gardens and locations, things of that nature. So we are very much open to green space because that really is kind of our wheelhouse for our agency.
Okay, now that's good to hear.
Just to add to that, yes, absolutely, there will be green space here. It's just a point of how much compared to other amenities. The other constraints would just be parking. Since there's not much room we could do parking at this site, but that again, it's a trade-off. If to have enough parking for a pavilion or a community theater stage would take away some of that green space. So I feel like it's more about what would you prefer, and there's trade-offs. But besides athletic fields and a building and a programmed use, I think we could do a lot of different things, but not everything.
Yeah, well, thank you for those comments, and I do see that the one of the issues we will have is with parking. So having something major like that, programmable type things may not work as well in order to do something like that. But the other things you shown earlier, where you have open space for people to walk, family play areas and stuff like that, looks like that's going to be a good opportunity for those things to happen. So thank you.
And before we move on, I do want to recognize we are also joined by Brian Friedlander, President for the Greater Pikesville Recreation Council. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bob.
And before I read out the next comment, I just wanted to say I see we have a bunch of people on the phone, and we will have an opportunity to unmute the phones at the very end. Comments from the chat. And so we do have a couple written questions and comments from India Artists. How is the design firm selected?
Sure. We can be open and transparent. The design firm for this project is WRA, with Flora Teeter as the landscape architect. If you're in the industry, you know that they are one of the tops. We picked them because they are really good at doing this. At the county, we have about 5 or 6 on-call design firms that submitted packages and were awarded master agreements with us. And when we have a park, we look at the capacity of the consultant, how many projects they currently have going with the county, as well as their expertise. So we picked this firm in particular because of their expertise in this type of park setting.
Thanks. And then from Deirdre, Deirdre wrote, dog parks tend to lead to disagreements and smells and odor. And then Sandy Parabek asked, would a pickleball court fit at this site?
And these are two good recommendations. And if we get a lot of interest in a dog park, that would be something we would look at. Yes, we understand that dog parks, like many park amenities, can bring some challenges to their use, and we work to mitigate those. So it would kind of be premature for us to determine, will a dog park work or will pickleball fit till we see all the input from the residents. We do know countywide I have heard on 1 or 2 occasions there's a desire for more pickleball courts in Baltimore County. I will add, we do actually have some of the highest number of pickleball courts in the region, comparative to a lot of other local municipalities. But if there is a desire through the feedback that we gain here and through the process for pickleball or for a dog park, then we will work to see if those amenities fit into that park development. I would imagine, though, just for the technical standpoint, that a pickleball court would fit within the constraints, just knowing that they don't take up that much space.
Agreed.
Great. And the next comment was from Marianne, who wrote that open space, walking trail, and pollinator garden would be best. And Deirdre agreed, adding that a playground for children would be a good amenity here. And then land would this be observable? And Sam is writing from the Williamsburg Community Association.
Sure, I can answer the pavilion piece, and Kara Berman, our regional coordinator, or Brandon Swear, our community supervisor, can certainly correct me if I go wrong in my assessment of the pavilions. Our standard practice is the pavilions at our park sites are reserved through a process. Generally after February 1, Kara, my mind escapes me.
It's generally March 1st, but
March 1st, sorry.
Yep, you're close.
March 1st, they open for public reservation process, and the public can reserve them through our recreation offices. And then we would issue a permit for that individual. It is a first come, first serve, but it is through the process. It's not just a first come, first serve. Whoever shows up that day is a process to get a formal agreement for access to the pavilion. So we do have a process. We do pavilion reservations in many areas. Unless I'm mistaken, Brandon, we currently do not have any existing picnic pavilions in the greater Pikesville boundaries. So that would be an amenity.
No, not at the moment.
So that would be an amenity that would be a new addition to the greater Pikesville community. But we do have current systems in place on how we do pavilion reservations. It's not just show up that day. We do have a reservation. We do staff it. So there is a process in place for pavilion reservation.
Great. And then Vanessa wrote or asked, would there be space for an outdoor calisthenics workout station?
Absolutely.
And then Patricia Hunt asked, if there's no parking, how will the streets that abut the park be affected? In other words, how will the properties next to the park have borders or separations from the park property?
I can take that one to start. So we would design this park knowing that we'd need parking for amenities that we put in. So if we put in amenities that require parking, we'd be looking to put in parking to facilitate those. That being said, people, I'm sure, will park in the neighborhood occasionally. I would hope that a lot of people would be walking into the park, but that's something that we would address further into the design process. But I reiterate, we wouldn't design a park that has amenities that we don't have sufficient parking for.
And then India Artist asked if you could provide pictures of the work for the design firm.
Sure. Towards the end, I could put their website in the chat. It's Flora Teeter, and they're the sub-consultant. And we can put that in the chat. They have a really good portfolio on their website.
Great, thanks. And then Michelle Snell, as a person who lives across the street from the property, I have a concern about a playground from noise level and dusk evening activity.
And I can take that. Yeah, all of our parks do operate in the county on a park closed from sunset to sunrise. So we deter activity after it gets dark. And we will take the concern about noise into consideration. If a playground is a wanted amenity, we would look for a location on the property that may locate it in the best space to not impact the neighbors with any of the activity that occurs.
I'm going to skip ahead to one question that's kind of relevant to that one from Dr. Tisdale. Being that this park would be open from sunrise to sunset, would there be security included like gating or lighting?
We do, you know, depending upon the park development, and again, this kind of goes back to what Drew mentioned, you know, when we finalize what the amenities will be, that will kind of drive what other pieces we put in as far as lighting. I mean, obviously we have parking, we would have, you know, safety lighting related to the parking. If we have a parking lot, in some cases we can gate the parking lot. But if it is just a kind of passive park, similar to like what Church Lane ends up, you know, being in design, there's not like a nighttime security measures at really any of our, you know, smaller neighborhood parks that are within the communities.
I'm going to skip ahead again once, just one very relevant question. Could the park have motion censored lighting for diminishing light pollution? So do we have motion sensor lighting?
That's actually an excellent question and not something we've done a lot of. We have had some conversations. We recently completed a master plan for one of our larger parks, Oregon Ridge, and in some of the community input sessions, light pollution was a discussion. So we're beginning to look at some of that, as well as we look at our overall county sustainability plan and environmental plan. We're moving towards more energy efficient pieces in our parks, and that may be a, you know, whether that's LED lighting versus the traditional lighting. But motion sensors on the kind of safety lights is something we have not done a lot of, but we can certainly take a look at that. It's a good idea.
Great. And Don Seestedt wrote, what about an accessible community garden or sensory garden designed with seniors in mind or people with disabilities? It was previously a nursery, so a tested garden area and near the Liberty Road corridor, which is known as a food desert.
We will put that down as something
Yep.
we could definitely do if there's interest.
And I'll also add, we do have a large community garden at Rockdale Park in the Liberty Road community. But we are always looking for opportunities where we can add community gardens.
And Rockdale also has raised community gardens for disabilities.
And Christina Connolly wrote, would there be space for a bike path, skate park, or ramps?
I'll let Director Smith take that.
I don't know that we would, while I don't want to say we won't do something, because this is the beginning of the community input. We have not identified this site as a skate park area. We work with the Baltimore County Skateboard Council. There's an overreaching Baltimore County Skateboard Council that helps us identify areas to expand skateboarding into. We're currently in design or final design, no bids, right, Drew? For a new skate park to be built in Baltimore County for the first concrete bowl skate park over on the east side. If you're a skater, you're also probably familiar with the large concrete skate bowl in Lansdowne, at Sandy Hills Park. But I thought this question was going to be related to a pump track, which is kind of a newer thing that we're seeing some requests for cyclists and skateboarders. It's kind of a circular track. So while I don't know that we would put a permanent skate park or track in here, we have had some internal conversations about some amenities that we can make portable, like a portable pump track that we could bring to sites to offer that activity at multiple sites instead of locating it just in one location in the county. So while this location may not be perfect for every amenity, we are trying to find ways to bring portable amenities that we can get to multiple communities regularly and not have people have to leave their community all the time to reach an amenity. So I am kind of glad to see stuff about bikes and skateboarding, because it does increase then our desire to try to find ways to meet those needs in different ways, like a portable pump track, for instance.
Great. Yeah, the first part of that comment was about just bike paths. So I'll just read out that Deirdre wrote, walking path could accommodate bicycles as well, like at Meadowwood that has walking, skateboarding, bikes on the And then Deirdre and Sheila just wrote in again to say that they don't think that a dog park would be appropriate use for this space. And then Kim had a question, I think, about process, if residents would have an opportunity to vote, I think probably on different designs.
So I would say yes, we'll most likely do, depending on the input we get from this meeting, we'll probably take the top however many and do a survey monkey, which will be something that we'll put out so everybody can put in their input. And we'll most definitely do the same thing when we come out with concepts. So the initial survey will determine the two concepts we come out with, and then we'll certainly be looking for, I hate calling them votes, but essentially we'd be surveying the community to see which is preferred.
Okay. Sheila Lewis asked if the park would have a water fountain.
With a bottle filler and a dog bowl.
Great. And then Sandy Parabek asked what the process will be for naming the park.
We have not finalized the process for naming the new park. It is something we can certainly filter back with the community. If you have suggestions on the name, I think I've already made it clear earlier today to my team that we're referring to this as the Bedford Road Park site just to try to locate it. I am not a fan of the Bedford Road Park, only because it becomes very confusing with Bedford Elementary, literally, 200 yards away. So if you think you have a fantastic idea for the park naming, by all means, send that in, and we will take those into consideration as we move through the process.
Great. Next up, we had a couple comments in favor of playgrounds. Tamika Mason writing, a playground for children is much needed. And Samantha Peschke wrote, I know I would really love a playground, have a young family. My first child is due August 31st. Congratulations. And live within walking distance of this park site. I think that it would make the community more attractive to younger families in support of playgrounds. Shelley Ahn wrote, I'm for a walking path and pollinator garden. My concern about the playground is that the elementary school will have a playground that will be accessible for children, and this might be close for another playground.
I would say that the playgrounds that we've been putting in these passive parks are significantly different than these school playgrounds. And they might offer a completely different type of play. Sensory options, natural features, a lot more seating and community areas within the playground. So I am thinking they're going to be fairly different.
And I'll also add, with the new orientation of the Bedford Elementary School site, the way they are normally constructing the new schools is the new school will be in some manner located where the current two baseball diamonds are at the Bedford site, and then the two, and then they'll build the new school, tear down the old school, and they'll replace the two diamonds. But also then the other pieces like the playground, the multi-purpose courts, those will all be behind the school, so those will be actually closer to like the Conn Avenue side of the property. So it will be a significant distance between the what will be the new Bedford Elementary's playground and this site. So, and we always think there's room for multiple playgrounds in the community.
All right. Sally Weaver and Severio Coletta wrote, given flooding and water flow issues can be an issue in the area, I second Marianne and Deirdre's comments regarding prioritizing green space, pollinator garden, and walking trails. Also, will there be a water management assessment, or will that be part of the design planning process? Designing for flood resiliency for both the site and the community around it is important.
Absolutely. The site will be professionally designed and obviously reviewed by all the necessary departments. There will absolutely be stormwater management in the form of most likely rain gardens. So the drainage will be significantly better than it is now in the area. I'm seeing the next comment of, will the parking lot be permeable? We've tried a couple in the county with some success. It all depends on the water level. I can guarantee you it's something that we'll be looking for and looking to see if we can do during design.
And Shelley wrote, could we include workout stations along a walking path like we see popping up at some newer parks? The Columbia waterfront has some outdoor workout machines like that.
I would love to if there's a need. We're putting some in Northwest Regional Park right now, and we finally got to look at some of the new equipment and the pricing, and it's very feasible. It's a lot. It's really kind of come down to an affordable range for jurisdictions. So I would say that if this is a one, we can certainly do it.
And Sheila Lewis asked, can you clarify the parking information? Would the number of car spaces be based on the size of the property?
That would be based on the use of the site, and that's going to be a much bigger conversation and something that we'd certainly be bringing up during the concept phase. And we'd want to hear from the community if you see that there's going to be a lot of community members walking or riding a bike to the park or driving, and that would kind of determine how much parking we need.
And Shelley wrote, can we have security cameras?
We've started adding in some places security cameras at our parks. It has generally been parks where we honestly need security cameras because we've had some issues, or they're in a very remote location. They may be a very large park, and we need to have some security at. We kind of take them on a case by case basis. We have found the best deterrent to unwanted activity at a park is positive activity at a park. And so we try, especially at new parks like this, to build them with the community uses in mind that make them attractive to the community use. And if we put positive use in the park, it tends to deter negative use in the park. So, I mean, our goal is not to start from the stance that we need to put some version of monitoring or security in all of our parks. We start from the stance of if we have a good park that engages the community, it will be a hub and a positive attraction to the community and not attract the negative attention.
Great. And next, Sheila Lewis asked, what would be the buffer between the boundaries of the park and residential properties immediately next to it? This will not allow people to enter the park and residential properties immediately enter the park from these streets and properties.
So this kind of shows the setback for where we could do past. The setback would be this yellow line. This is not exact, but that's about where it would be. We are open to connecting to these roads. We kind of want to hear from the community on this. We're always for connectivity. We'd love to connect all these communities, but we'd want to hear from you. If there's a strong concern, we would be open to a discussion about some sort of, I don't want to say fence, but some sort of a barrier, whether it be landscaped or otherwise. So I would just go back to waiting to hear from the community so we can make those determinations.
And just looking ahead, I saw that Vanessa wrote, will the park be fenced in? So I think that that's sort of addressing that comment as well, or that question as well. Then next up, India Artists wrote that if there is a community garden, we have to make sure that people maintain that garden, which I think at the other community gardens in the county, there are groups that help to make sure that's maintained. And then has consideration been given to entrances and exits, particularly leaving the streets that are currently dead ends onto the property as they are?
We have not reached that part of this process yet. I don't think that there's an intention of bringing those streets into the property for parking at this time, but we're way too early in the process to be able to answer that. And just to clarify what I was speaking about earlier, the setback on this zoning is, or on this property will be 20 feet from the property line, but there's also a utility easement. So that's why we're hesitant to say an exact number until we get through design.
Tanea wrote, is it possible to have a water sprinkler for kids to run through and a pavilion?
Again, if those are desires from the community, we can look at them. We're actually identifying splash pad for another park location currently. We'll add those are expensive amenities to put in, because generally if we put in a splash pad, we also look to put in a comfort station where people can change and things like that. So sometimes amenities develop additional amenities that we need to put in. So we will have to be thoughtful when we look at, the input that we receive here from the residents, both here tonight and in our emails and future input.
Next, Sheila Lewis wrote, are there passive ways to discourage night usage? For example, no lighting at night?
So that's a double-edged sword. Director Smith, you want to speak on that one?
Sure, and we get this both ways. We just recently, I know Drew mentioned that some of the playgrounds we're building are much different than what was done in the past. And I'm thinking of the Hamiltown Park. We just did a new playground in the Rosedale community, or renovation of a playground in the Rosedale community, and they were very adamant on adding additional lighting to the park. So again, we'll take the input and we'll work with our consultant to try to work within that input. We do always find it interesting that we see different sides in different communities on the thoughts on what they want in the park. Some communities want more lighting in the park. Some communities want less lighting in the park. I will be honest, there is not a perfect answer on this answer deters negative activity at night in the park. We light up some of the parks at night, and we'll have some nighttime activity. In some of the parks we have no lights in, and we'll have nighttime activity, or we'll have no nighttime activity. So it's not a straight line, but we will take the input from the residents. I think lighting in this park would have to be very thoughtful because of the proximity to homes. We would not want, light pollution to feed over in any of the homes. So we would have to be thoughtful about that, but security lighting we can certainly look at. And I think then there was also, I'll tie that in because then there was also a question, will there be electric available in the park if we put in something like a pavilion or lighting, and it makes sense to have an accessible outlet like with a pavilion it always does, then we would establish that as well.
Absolutely.
A couple comments about the sidewalks surrounding this. So would there be modifications to provide sidewalks on this road? And the sidewalks in the area are in rough shape.
Yes.
Yeah, we would, like around the park, we would probably look at the sidewalking situation, but we extend into the road. It's going to become a bigger question for DPWT, Department of Public Works and Transportation. So yeah, I can't answer all the questions for all the community sidewalks without consulting with DPWT. And that's true. You have something additional to add on that.
Yeah, so currently there's not sidewalks in front of this property. We would be adding sidewalks to connect to the existing sidewalks. And when we did that, we would, Director Smith and I would make that phone call and really ask and push for the investment from DPWT to extend that new sidewalk as far as we can go. We'd be also be looking to work with DPWT on any crosswalks needed or things like that. Those are a bit out of our hands, so it would certainly be a conversation. But I can say with all certainty, when this park is developed, we will have a sidewalk out front connecting the existing sidewalks because it will be required.
Danae asked, could you build an amphitheater for concerts?
If everyone wants it, it would take up a lot of space, but if it's something that we saw that everybody wanted, it's certainly something we could look at the feasibility of.
Tamika Mason asked, are school playgrounds accessible to the public during school hours?
I can't speak on BCBS's policy. Generally, the courts and playgrounds at school sites are used by the school system during the day. And they, for very, obvious reasons, they are very protective of the school grounds while school is in session. Like I know when our staff is out on the fields, we're often checking in with the school before we're out there. So the school, I can't speak for the school system, but I do know in my experience that the courts and playgrounds at particularly the elementary school sites are very much in use by the school system during the day.
Okay. Next question, I think Director Smith addressed in part. D. Harvin asked if power would be available for gatherings, and so if we were to build pavilions or something, that might be a part of it, dependent.
Just to add to that, if we need to bring power into the park and have a power service, then absolutely we'd have power available. But if we're not having pavilions that need power, I'm not sure that we would have that infrastructure unless it's asked for.
Great, thanks for the clarification. Deirdre commented that school playgrounds are not accessible during school hours, so a separate playground would be great at this site for stay-at-home moms, homeschoolers, etc. And then Dr. Tisdale asked what type of trash collection schedules would this type of property have?
This would,
yeah, generally work with the Department of Solid Waste, the county's Department of Solid Waste. They generally do weekly trash pickup on the barrels that we have at the parks. In certain locations, if it's needed, we have expanded that to 2-day-a-week can emptying. And that'll really be dependent upon what do we put there, how much usage does it get, and then we can make modifications. There are certain parks, certain community parks that we've had that see quite a heavy bit of use, and we've had moved them to a 2 or even a 3-day-a-week trash pickup if the need arises. But as a general rule, Department of Solid Waste handles the trash pickup on a weekly basis. For the I'm talking about for the freestanding barrels. I don't. But again, if we establish a bigger footprint in this park, in some cases we establish a dumpster pad or something like that. But it's all going to depend upon the amenities and what goes into the park before we establish what type of support we get from the other agencies like solid waste.
Sheila Lewis asked, is the natural playground, I think like the one you showed in the other design, different from the traditional playground? And if so, how? Also, how will the playground be designed to consider children with disabilities?
Sure, I can take that one. We're currently in the middle of designing about 23 playgrounds for the county, and some of them quite large. So we are working with our playground designers to identify ways to make our playgrounds accessible. We're also working with the Baltimore Commission on Disabilities. As far as how they're different, I'm just going to pull a slide back up. You see less of bright, tall playground equipment and more of things that you kind of use your imagination with, using the topography in the area to create slides, using natural logs. I could go on and on, rocks, just more of it doesn't stand out as a big playground. Now this helps out with children with mobility challenges, just for the sheer fact that you don't have to get up top on something to play. You can pretty much reach everything that's there. So I hope that answers that. It's kind of a pretty broad question and we could speak on it for hours, but I can assure you that we look to address it.
Dr. Tisdale asked, do these types of services provided to the community, I guess in creating this kind of park, increase property taxes to help with maintenance?
I can't really speak on if having a park, I mean, generally as a general rule of thumb, and I may look to Deputy Director Weinstock, who may have some information on this, but generally park development increases property values as a general rule, not in every case, but it is a general rule that if your property is located close to an park development, that it increases the property value. So I guess in that manner, it would increase the property tax level, which then of course feeds all county operations. So I guess there's a long way to get to. I would imagine that yes, eventually the money does go towards helping with maintenance.
And just to tack onto that, this property was purchased with program open space funds, which is, a DNR program, a state program. And we also use LOS funds, which are local open space waivers when developers build developments and give the county money. We use that to build these parks.
Great. Next, we had a few comments on access. Sheila Lewis wrote, we don't want to open these roads to enter the park. And Deirdre wrote, the top of Bedford and Buckingham leading to the park could be blocked by bars so as to allow only foot traffic. And Sheila Lewis wrote, the people who live on Bedford and Buckingham roads would be impacted if there were entry to the park by opening these roads. And then
Absolutely.
one more on access. Marianne wrote, Paul's Crossing HOA would like a natural barrier that border on Paul's Farmway and Red Haven Road.
Right. We can look at that. I know that we recently planted a tree line there, and we can look to expand that.
And Vanessa asked if there are pavilions, would there be a restroom?
Generally, where we have pavilions, we like to have a comfort station. It is not always the case. We do have some sites where we have a pavilion, and we will put in that case, we would put a spot pot location. If it's a pavilion that we would reserve out, I know several people have made I don't want a spot pot look in the camera, and I understand. So again, we will look at what the requests are and then try to balance them, knowing that if we were to establish a thriving pavilion reservation there, we may need additional parking, we may need comfort stations. So, one amenity sometimes tips into other amenities. So we will take all those in consideration when we see what the input is. Now we have done, as we're doing at Church Lane, some public gathering spaces that doesn't kind of crest into a pavilion, but it does give some ability for local residents to come to and meet up, putting in some like outdoor gaming tables, variety of seating options. So there are ways to build community gathering without crossing into the pavilion threshold.
I can take these next couple of comments. Yes, there will be seating throughout the park. There will be lots of benches. No matter what we do, there will be lots of benches in this park. And yes, we will be putting in additional trees to increase the tree canopy. We'll be working in collaboration with DAPS, our partnering agency, to plant landscape trees. Our goal would be to have this evolve into a naturally shaded area. So the playground would be naturally shaded and other amenities would be naturally shaded.
And then on the bathrooms question, if we have a comfort station, permanent bathroom, kind of as we do across the street at Subbrook, the Subbrook Fields, our staff in conjunction with Office of Property Management maintains those. If it is a spot pot, then a spot pot company that we contract with maintains those. I'm not saying we're putting a spot pot there. I'm just explaining who cleans the variety of the amenities.
And yes to game tables. I like the game tables. You'll be seeing them soon at Church Lane at Meadow Creek Park. So I think we might be ready to go to phones.
Yep, so everybody bear with me. I just want to make sure that we do have input from people who decided to call in, but sometimes they're not ready to speak, so we'll just unmute one at a time. We've got a bunch of 410 numbers, this one ending in 20. If you'd like to speak, you're unmuted. All right, we've got a 410 ending in 76. If you'd like to speak, you're unmuted. All right, I'm going to go to the next phone, which begins in 410, ending in 91. Right. I think we don't have someone speaking there. We've got a 410 number ending in 11. If you'd like to share any comments, you're unmuted. All right, and one more 410 number ending in 14. Do you have any comments? You're unmuted. And we have 3 443 numbers, which maybe I'll go ahead and unmute at the same time. If you have a 443 number, you are unmuted and able to speak.
I'm good, thank you.
Great, thanks. And then we have 1870 number. You're unmuted if you have any comments.
Yeah, hi. I live on Buckingham Road. I was just curious. I've got 2 young kids, both under 5. Just what the total project timeline looks like. I know it's just in the gathering input phase, which is from start to finish, I guess. Total time.
Sure, I'm going to bring that back up.
Just, I think this caller won't be able to see what you're speaking about, so just.
Sure. So, we are past spring 2023 where we engaged the consultant. This summer and fall of 2023, we'll be gathering public input. If we can get a scope together by November, we'd be working on design and permitting November 2023 to November 2024. That would allow us to go out to construction bid in November 2024 and hopefully get bids back March 2025 to break ground in spring 2025 and have a fall 2025 ribbon cutting. That's if we don't hit any roadblocks, we keep on going, and it's a reasonable schedule. That being said, it's estimated, and sometimes we need to stop to get things right. So best case, this is what we're looking at, completion fall 2025.
Great. I did just see that we do have one participant who raised their hand, presumably to speak. So that's Robin Howard. I will unmute you. Robin Howard, if you'd like to speak, you're muted. I'm going to put your hand down. If you want to write your question in the chat or anything after, just let me know, or just go ahead and do that. Then we had a couple comments that just came in. Would rather keep the park more natural. Yes to small gathering areas over pavilions. And from Sheila Lewis, too many unique amenities added to the small community park might attract people from other areas. It's hoped that this will fulfill a need for open space and physical activity for the communities in the area.
Okay, and I do want to add, I missed in the beginning, we have Zachary Basso from the County Executive's Office also in attendance on the call. And I didn't know, Zach, if you wanted to add any comments?
Oh, yep. Just thank you all for attending tonight. Thank you all the hard work you guys do at Rec and Parks. I think this would be a great thing for Pikesville. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, then I guess barring any additional comments, it looks like we have kind of worked our way through the comments in the chat. But again, as we mentioned previously, this is not your only opportunity. If you have family members, neighbors, friends who could not attend this evening for other reasons, perhaps they were the Orioles game watching them dodge the sweep tonight, then feel free to pass on the capital projects-rp baltimorecounty.md.gov. Once we have worked through all of the input that we received, we will work towards developing, I believe, 2 concepts that we will bring back. So we don't have a timeline yet. I know that is a question that's come up here, and it is always a question. When will we hear from you all again? We will set up an additional meeting. We will get the advertisement out, just as we did in this case, so to make sure everyone is involved and have an additional meeting to get the feedback on the concepts that we work towards developing from the input we're receiving here. So we want to keep the community engaged. It is a community park. We want to hear from you. It is your park. So we'll try to give you every opportunity we can to get that input in. So barring any additional questions, Justin Silverman, any other comments from the councilman's office?
No, I thought it was a great presentation and appreciate all your hard work, and we look forward to moving together on this.
Excellent. We appreciate the support and attendance. So again, thank you all for attending. This only works because you all attend and offer your input. This is the best way for us to hear from the residents and to do a collaborative project. So we want you all involved. We're glad you're involved. And we want to thank you for coming out tonight and listening to me drone on about parks. So thanks again, and we'll be back in touch once we set up the second meeting. And as always, if you have any input, please forward it out to us. Thank you.